Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one. The introduction. There's an unspoken truth behind the quiet streets of Pembroke Pines, a city nestled between Florida's sprawling suburban landscape and the vitality of its nightlife. To the casual observer, the palm trees sway gently in the soft breeze, and families gather around barbecues, laughter punctuating the warm nights. Yet beneath this veneer of tranquility lies a mystery that has haunted the community for years and remains unsolved. On a balmy evening in June, the shadows grew long as the sun dipped below the horizon. The local park, usually pulsing with the sounds of children playing, lay deserted. The chirping of crickets replaced joyous laughter, and the echoes of skateboard wheels against the pavement faded into the distance. It was here, in this very park, that the unthinkable would soon occur. Mia Emerson, a bright, ambitious college student, had taken the last few moments of daylight to unwind after a long semester. Despite the pervading stillness, she found comfort in the familiarity of the path she ran nearly every day. That evening, the transient security of everyday life would shatter into a horrifying reality, igniting a firestorm of questions without answers. Just as dusk settled, Mia's phone buzzed, illuminating her hand with a warm glow. A message, one that would become the last trace of her existence. It was innocuous at first, a friend, inquiring about dinner plans, but it would be her final communication, her final glimpse of the life she had always dreamt of leading. As the night enveloped Pembroke Pines, the dread of the unknown began to seep into the community, setting off alarm bells that would echo in the hearts of many for years to come. The victim, Mia Emerson, was more than just a face in the crowd of Pembroke Pines. She was a beacon of promise. At 22, she stood at the precipice of adulthood, her aspirations soaring just as high as the palm trees that lined her neighborhood. An honor student at a local university, Mia balanced her studies with a part-time job at a local cafe, where her infectious laughter brightened the dimmest days. Friends described her as fiercely loyal, always ready to lend an ear or a hand to those in need. Her family often marveled at her relentless determination. The daughter of a single mother who juggled multiple jobs, Mia's childhood was filled with love, but tinged with the struggles of financial strain. Yet this only fueled her ambition. She dreamed of becoming a psychologist, wanting to guide others through their darkest moments, just as she had navigated her own. Mia had built a circle of friends who adored her. They often gathered in her cozy apartment filled with books, plants, and the lingering smell of freshly brewed coffee. They laughed over late-night study sessions, discussing their hopes and fears as they shared slices of homemade pie made by her mother. It was a sanctuary of sorts, where none could sense that time was running out for their beloved friend. As investigators would later learn, Mia was methodical in her routines, often logging her workouts and study sessions in a journal her mother had gifted her. On that fateful evening, the path she loved felt safe, familiar, a stark contrast to the terror that was about to unfold. Little did anyone know that the person they celebrated, the laughter that filled their lives, was about to become a mere shadow, a fleeting memory, in a world that would grind to a halt in the face of tragedy. The crime scene. The first call for emergency services rang out at precisely 8:17 p.m., shattering the silence that enveloped Pembroke Pines. A jogger, breathless and shaken, stumbled into a nearby convenience store to report what he had stumbled upon at the park. As the dispatcher sensed the urgency in his voice, sirens distorted the quiet night air, their wails growing louder as they approached the scene. When the officers arrived at the park, the setting sun cast long shadows over the lush grass, contrasting sharply with the sinister reality they were being thrust into. It was a picturesque scene, now eerily punctuated by the presence of forensic markers that recorded the objects and disturbances that bore witness to the horror that had taken place. A glistening pool of blood on the ground began to illuminate the gravity of the situation, painting a stark reminder that danger often lurked in the unlikeliest of places. A struggle had clearly occurred. Nearby, scuff marks on the dirt indicated a fierce contest, perhaps a desperate escape attempt. Officers surveyed the area with acute focus, noting the remnants of Mia's belongings scattered amidst the grass. A water bottle, her workout towel, and, heartbreakingly, her phone. The pristine device lay cracked and twisted, forever holding the final messages she had exchanged before that cruel moment stole her life. While details began to emerge, the immediate task for detectives was to secure the area and keep the onlookers and press at bay. Mia's family would soon be on their way, unaware of the devastating news that awaited them. The sun dipped lower, fading to a twilight hue that seemed to mock the chaos unfolding beneath its gaze. With each minute that ticked by, the detectives knew they were racing against time to piece together the fragments of a life now tragically disrupted. A puzzle that would challenge even the most seasoned investigators. The early investigation. As dawn broke over Pembroke Pines, the glimmer of the sun did little to lift the heaviness that hung in the air. The horror of last night's discovery weighed heavily on the shoulders of the detectives assigned to the case. Among them, Detective Alex Warren, known for his unyielding resolve and empathy, led the initial investigation. He took one last glance at the crime scene before turning his attention to the somber task ahead, gathering the pieces of Mia's life that could lead to the truth behind her tragic end. Witness statements became the lifeblood of the investigation. Officers interviewed the jogger who had stumbled upon Mia's body, hoping to extract every detail he could recall. The man, visibly shaken, described a flash of movement, a figure darting away in the growing darkness. His words, while filled with urgency, lacked clarity. It all happened so fast. He stammered, recalling the indistinct outline of a person, a figure that could have belonged to anyone. With scant leads to pursue, Detective Warren redirected his focus to Mia's relationships. Her friends were interviewed, revealing a young woman with no apparent enemies. But there were murmurs of a recent breakup and a troubling encounter with a stranger at the cafe where she worked. As her best friend recounted the events leading up to Mia's last day, worry creased her brow. She felt someone was watching her, she admitted, her voice quavering. This revelation ignited Warren's instincts. It hinted at a sinister undertone that warranted further pursuit. As investigators began delving into Mia's online presence, they unearthed a trove of social media interactions and messages that could potentially unlock a Pandora's box of motives. Each thread woven into the tapestry of her life painted a picture more intricate than the detectives had first anticipated. The sun climbed higher, illuminating potential paths to follow, but as every second ticked away, the urgency to solve this case intensified. The clock was ticking, indicating any answers. The dead ends. Detective Warren believed in the rhythms of the investigative process, the highs of breakthroughs, paired with the lows of dead ends. Yet with each passing day, the stagnation of progress began to gnaw at his resolve. The gathered evidence offered nothing concrete to grasp, leaving the team in a perplexing labyrinth of futility as they searched for the elusive thread that could lead them to Mia's killer. As the investigation unfolded, the leads that once seemed promising fell apart under scrutiny. The stranger described by Mia's friend turned out to be a regular customer at the cafe, known to be harmless and well-liked. "He's just a shy guy," one friend insisted, her voice filled with cautious disbelief. "He wouldn't hurt anyone." With every interview, the potential suspects more closely resembled the shadows from which they emerged, unassuming and ordinary. The social media accounts that had initially sparked interest yielded only benign exchanges, filled with thoughts about classes, small victories, and plans for summer trips that now hung like a cruel taunt in the detective's mind. Each digital footprint reeked of normalcy, a stark contrast to the void left behind by Mia. Detective Warren felt the mounting pressure of unmet expectations, not just from the department, but from a community desperate for justice for the girl whose laughter had once filled the streets. As days turned into weeks, the urgency began to fade to a muted anxiety. The park, the scene of the crime, became a ghostly reminder of its former vibrancy. A site where families now hesitated to linger. The local news stations, once buzzing with stories that captured the heart of Pembroke Pines, slowly transitioned to highlighting the lack of progress in the case. Investigators began to dread their morning briefings. Each new day brought the weight of disappointment, each update dwindling to familiar phrases. "We're following leads, and we haven't given up." With the case growing colder, Detective Warren found himself examining the evidence again, searching for patterns, buried clues, or inconsistencies. Every element of the investigation began to blur together. The haunting specter of Mia's absence settled in the recesses of his mind, urging him to persist, to keep digging for the truth, no matter how deep he had to go. A break in the case, just as the weight of stagnation threatened to consume the entire investigation. A sliver of hope emerged on a rainy Thursday afternoon. Detective Warren sat at his desk, poring over the files for what felt like the 100th time, his mind wandering to thoughts of breakthrough and connection. It was during this reflective moment that a call came through from the forensic lava match on the evidence collected from the crime scene. The unmistakable sound of a fingerprint scanner whirring on the other end of the line jolted him into focus. A good Samaritan had turned in a broken phone found discarded just a block away from the park, and investigators had just begun the painstaking task of retrieval. As the forensic technician detailed how the phone's data had led to a number linked to a suspected acquaintance of Mia's, Warren felt a surge of urgency. Hours later, he found himself sitting across from Thomas "Tommy" Reed in a cramped interview room. Once Mia's classmate, Tommy was known for his eclectic personality, often finding himself on the fringes of social circles. The sight of him nervous and fidgety invoked a sense of unease within Warren. As the questions unfolded, Tommy's anxiety bubbled just below the surface, and the detective caught the slightest hint of dishonesty in his hurried responses. "Yeah, I knew Mia," he said a bit too quickly, his eyes darting to the door rather than making contact. "She was cool. We hung out once or twice. Possibly too much caffeinated energy accompanied each word. A potential sign of a guilty conscience." Warren pressed further, trying to decipher if the guilt was rooted in criminality or mere infatuation. As the interrogation progressed, a lead emerged that connected Tommy to the park in the aftermath of Mia's death. A witness had seen an individual matching his description loitering near the entrance shortly before Mia was last seen. Warren's heart quickened as he reeled in the threads Tommy had motive and access. And with the evidence of the phone, a clearer picture began to emerge. Just as it seemed they were turning the tide, a voice in the back of Warren's mind reminded him of the fine line he had to tread. What might seem like a breakthrough could also lead to a cul-de-sac of misdirection. Nevertheless, as the pieces started to align, it became clear they were finally on the brink of uncovering the darkness that lay heavy over Pembroke Pines. The suspect, Tommy Reed, once an innocuous figure in the tapestry of college life, now occupied the center of the investigation as the primary suspect in Mia's murder. The air in the interrogation room felt thick with tension as Detective Warren leaned forward, scrutinizing Tommy's shifting demeanor. His hands trembled slightly, betraying a facade of confidence that felt more like a fragile mask. As Warren laid out the evidence, the fingerprint from the crime scene matched Tommy. She watched as disbelief morphed into a creeping dread across the young man's face. It was a visceral transformation, and Warren seized on that moment, knowing the weight of the truth could either shatter or liberate. This is your chance to come clean, Tommy. We know you were there that night. Help us understand what happened. Tommy's breaths became harsh, labored as he fought against an inward panic. You don't understand. I wasn't trying to hurt her. The desperate plea echoed against the stark walls, reverberating with an intensity that further fueled Warren's resolve. Struggling to maintain control, Tommy confessed that he had a crush on Mia, a secret obsession that he couldn't contain. In a frantic rush, Tommy detailed how he had followed Mia that evening, hoping to express his feelings. But as he approached her in the park, she recoiled from him, her instincts warning her of something unsettling. In the chaos that unfolded, he claimed she fell and hit her head against a bench in her attempt to escape, leading to an unforeseen turn of events that resulted in her death. Detective Warren studied the wavering gaze of the suspect. In that moment, he realized this wasn't merely a story of obsession gone wrong. There were still pieces missing: the accusations of lurking, the anxious phone call, and the broken phone now seemed pivotal in deciphering the truth. He pressed on, asking about the items retrieved from the crime scene. Tommy's silence spoke volumes, revealing the lengths he might have gone to hide the reality of what transpired. With each question, Tommy's resolve weakened. The cracks in his story began to widen, revealing the troubling incongruities between what he claimed and what the evidence suggested. Detective Warren knew they were standing on the precipice of unearthing a chilling truth. But an unsettling feeling gnawed at him. Was Tommy merely a desperate kid attempting to navigate a nightmare? Or was this facade concealing a darker reality? As the hours slipped by, the investigation spiraled into a haze of uncertainty. Certainty felt like a distant mirage. They now faced a perilous path, leading deeper into the shadows, teetering precariously between accusation and the haunting specter of innocence lost. The trial. The courtroom was filled with a palpable tension, reverberating through the air as spectators from Pembroke Pines gathered in support of Mia Emerson's family. The reality of her absence settled heavily upon them, her mother clutching a framed photo of her daughter, bright-eyed and full of dreams, and a heartbreaking reminder of what was lost. On the opposite side, Tommy Reed sat hunched over at the defendant's table, a stark contrast to his once vibrant persona. A veneer of innocence covered the dread lurking within his eyes. As the trial commenced, the judge's gavel struck down, initiating a process that some hoped would offer closure, while others feared would only deepen the wounds left by Mia's passing. The prosecution's opening statements painted Tommy as a young man with an obsession that spiraled dangerously out of control, culminating in a fateful encounter under the park's fading lights. They described in detail how Tommy had stalked Mia, weaving the story of infatuation warped into something grotesquely love story turned tragic. The evidence laid before the jury was intricate and overwhelming. A series of texts revealed Tommy's growing fixation and jealousy, messages that hinted at his feelings and frustrations after being rebuffed. Prosecution's forensic expert crafted a narrative that placed Tommy squarely at the scene of the crime. The damning fingerprint on the shattered phone, that broken connection symbolic of a life taken, served as a concrete link between him and the horrors in that park. Yet, Tommy's defense stood resolute in the face of the prosecution's claims. They argued that this was not a case of premeditated murder, but rather a tragic accident rooted in immaturity. They spun a tale of panic overtaking Tommy when things unraveled, asserting that he had not intended for any harm to come to Mia. He was a young man overwhelmed by his emotions. His lawyer pleaded, not a monster. As testimonies were recounted, featuring the 911 call, Mia's friends, and the forensic details of the crime scene, emotions fluctuated throughout the courtroom. With every unfolding detail, the jury struggled to grapple with the truth. A 13-page confession from Tommy, describing the events of that night, was presented, but it was riddled with contradictions and attempts to deflect blame. The weeks of the trial dragged on, marked by an unpredictable ebb and flow of perspectives. Defense and prosecution clashed over interpretations of evidence, and the media buzzed with speculation as the townspeople rallied for justice. It became increasingly clear that each day in that court held the weight of Mia's memory, a vibrant life reduced to analysis and argument. As the jury deliberated, Detective Warren observed from the back, knowing that for all the evidence and testimony, the outcome would echo beyond the verdict, influencing not just Tommy. But the entire community of Pembroke, Connecticut. Star taken far too soon. The aftermath. The gavel fell sharply, punctuating the air and announcing the jury's decision. We find the defendant, Tommy Reed, guilty of involuntary manslaughter. The words hit like a thunderclap in the courtroom, echoing through the hearts of Mia Emerson's family and friends. Relief mingled with sorrow as they absorbed the verdict. While it was not the first-degree murder charge they had hoped for, it provided a semblance of just a small compensation for a life stolen in its prime. In the weeks that followed the trial, Pembroke Pines grappled with the aftermath of the verdict. The community was a tapestry of emotions, united in grief, yet divided by lingering questions of culpability and guilt. The evenings in the park now held a different energy, a weight of unspeakable tragedy that clung to the branches of the palm tree. Families would visit, their laughter hushed in reverence for the girl whose dreams had abruptly ended beneath those very boughs. Mia's mother, seeking solace in her daughter's legacy, established a scholarship in Mia's name, aimed at supporting students who hoped to pursue psychology. This is what she would have wanted, she said, her eyes brimming with tears yet resolute, to help others, to make a difference. As the scholarship grew, it became a dedicated space for remembrance, creating an enduring bond between community and kindness, a way to transform grief into something constructive and hopeful. Meanwhile, Tommy Ride faced the consequences of his actions in a state prison. It had felt insurmountable. A punishment for a moment's miscalculation that had forever altered the lives of so many. His nights turned into a reflective haze, haunted by the memories of that fateful encounter. There was no doubt the tragedy weighed heavily upon him. Conversations among inmates painted the picture of a young man struggling with guilt while grappling with the reality that he would never get the chance to make amends. Outside the walls of the prison, Detective Warren took a personal stake in the growth of the scholarship. He often visited the park, reflecting on the investigation and the myriad twists that had unfolded along the way. A sense of responsibility gnawed at him. What more could have been done? As he sought answers among the shadows of the cypress trees, he became enveloped in the stories of others who had suffered loss, often sharing conversations with familiar faces who had been touched by Mia's kindness. The echoes of Mia Emerson's laughter reached beyond her absence, rippling through the lives she had impacted. As seasons changed, lives began to adjust to the new normal. Families refocused their energies. A town began to heal, but the memory of that night lingered, a ghost in the collective conscience of Pembroke Pines. What? They had lost a piece of their hearts, yet in their grief, they found resilience, keeping Mia's spirit alive through the compassion they extended to one another. Reflection. Months after the trial, as dawn painted the sky in hues of orange and lavender, Detective Warren stood in the park that Mia once frequented. The shadows no longer felt foreboding, yet a somber weight persisted. He placed a single white flower at the base of a tree that faced the path where she had last run. For him, it was an act of remembrance, a connection to the ideals Mia embodied, hope, and the resilience of spirit. With each passing day, he reflected on the fragility of life and the intertwining fate between choices and consequences. Mia's case had unveiled the complexities of human emotion and obsession, a reminder of how quickly innocence can be subverted. As he pondered the ripple effects of tragedy on a community, he also embraced a new understanding of his role, not just as a detective bound by duty, but as an advocate for change. In the months that followed, Warren participated in community meetings, sharing insights about creating safe environments, promoting mental health awareness, and emphasizing the importance of empathy over ignorance. His experiences unfolded into a message that resonated with parents, educators, and young adults alike. A collective call to prioritize connection, communication, and understanding. Ultimately, Mia's legacy transformed the fabric of Pembroke Pines, inspiring not just a scholarship, but a movement and awakening that threaded through families, educators, and local leaders, urging them to foster environments where emotional health could flourish, allowing compassion to light the way in a world dense with complexity. Mia would not be forgotten. Her spirit would transcend the tragedy, reminding everyone that within every loss lies a profound opportunity for growth, healing, and renewed dedication to protect the vulnerable.